Hey, this is Chris, and welcome to Popcorn Finance, the show where we discuss finance in about the time it takes to make a bag of popcorn. Today, we will be starting a 4-part series that I'm calling Poppin' with Fire. And when I say FIRE, I'm talking about the acronym Financial Independence Retire Early. And this has been a movement that has been gaining popularity over the past few years, been getting more and more notoriety in the media, and something that just overall just fascinates me. And I'm also really excited to say that this series is brought to you by Airbnb. There are two main financial pieces or concepts that make up the FIRE movement. That's cutting your expenses or earning more money. Because the whole idea is that you put aside enough money to cover your expenses so that way you don't have to work if you don't want to. Hosting on Airbnb can help you with the earning more money side of that equation. Currently, over 2 million people are earning money by hosting on Airbnb. When you host on Airbnb, you can earn some extra cash to help boost up your retirement savings or help build up that down payment for your first rental property. It's free to list, and Airbnb has a tool that'll help you price your place just right. And if you're worried about your property, Airbnb offers a host guarantee that helps protect your property in the unlikely event that something goes wrong. So if you head over to popcornfinance.com/Airbnb, you can get more info on how to start hosting, and you'll receive a $100 cash bonus if you generate $500 in booking value by May 31st. Terms and conditions apply. So thanks again to Airbnb for being a part of this series. And over the next 4 weeks, we're going to take a look into this whole FIRE movement and what's it all about. Each of the episodes, we're going to be looking at it from a different perspective. We're going to start things off with Brad, the co-host of the ChooseFI podcast, and he's going to give us some of the foundational pillars of the FIRE movement. Then we'll be joined by Julian and Kirsten from Rich and Regular, and they're right in the middle of their journey for financial independence. They're going to talk to us about their motivations, why they even decided to take this journey, and what things are looking like for them now. Then I'll be joined by Jillian Johnsrud from Montana Money Adventures, and she's going to share with us how being stuck in a really difficult financial situation when she was young drove her to achieve financial independence at a very young age. And lastly, we'll wrap things up with a discussion on the varying paths that you can take to reach financial independence and the route that I'm deciding to take on my journey to FI. As always, I appreciate you joining me, and let's jump into the first episode, The Pillars of F.I, with Brad from ChooseFI, which was recorded on the conference floor at Podcast Movement in Philadelphia.
So excited to be here, and it's a cool series that you have going here with a focus on FI. I love it.
Oh, thank you. It's so, I think, transformative mentally that I think it's something everyone should at least know about, whether you decide to just take it on all the way or you just kind of can implement pieces of it. I think it still can impact your life in a really positive way.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful part is that this is not all or nothing. It's not binary 0 or 1. It's just approaching an intentional life that where you make decisions based on value, you make decisions based on what you want your life to look like, as opposed to just reacting, right? Yeah. Reacting to what kind of car the neighbor has or what expensive clothes and you see on advertising or other nonsense like that. Like you can build a structure of a wonderful life that just costs a lot less than your friends and family, and you can get wealthy while living the normal American, whatever you want to call it, middle class life, right? And to me, that's the beauty of FI is it's kind of like looking at life as this fun game that you can both win at. So for type A personalities or recovering type A's like me, and also that you can design your life. And I think there's just so much beauty and freedom there that it just speaks to people. And I know it's spoken to you, right, since you found it.
Yeah, and that was very well put. That was beautiful, that statement there.
Well, thank you.
And you're right. And when I heard about financial independence, it sounded great, but it sounds intimidating because it's like a big concept. And I was like, what are you supposed to do? How do you even, get started with this? And then that's when I came across your show. And it was episode 21 where you did an episode all about the pillars of FI. So it's like the foundation of what financial independence is. And so I know that there's many pieces to it, but I wanted to have a chance to talk with you about some of the bigger components of those pillars.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. And I think the biggest starting point, and I'm not sure that this was an explicit pillar, but it may have been, frankly, is your FI number. Like, what is FI? So for me, FI comes down to controlling what you can control. And for most people, that's the expenses side of, let's say, the gap. So the gap is you have your income, you take away your expenses, and then you have your gap, right? Or your savings. A normal person would call it a savings amount, right? Like that's the money that you have left over, right? So there's two ways to approach that. or really you can attack both sides. You can lower your expenses, you could raise your income, right? And that either increases the gap, and certainly both increases the gap even more. So for me though, the low-hanging fruit, and that's always how I approach life. Like I don't like to go after things that are going to be impossible and right from the outset.
Yep.
You know, small wins matter to people. So getting those small wins at first, where you can create a little momentum, right? Psychological momentum,
Yes.
are huge. So for me, it's focusing on that number at first, which is instead of, you know, if you're in the regular world of finance, you've seen a retirement calculator, and you know, you go on Fidelity's website and they plug in, hey, what's your current income?
Yeah.
Right? That's the starting point. But to me, that is a BS metric, because your current income, by definition, if you're ever going to get to retirement, by definition has a savings component built into it, right?
Exactly,
It has
exactly.
to, or it will be into infinity
Yeah,
before you can get to retirement.
You'll
right?
never
If
stop
you're-
working.
right? If you're saving zero, right, by definition. So just there, it's an artificial construct. So to me, I look at it instead of income as a starting point, as expenses. Okay. And there's a very famous study called the Trinity study, which is far beyond the confines of a short podcast, obviously, where basically there's this 4% kind of rule of thumb, as we call it. So if you have a pot of money that makes up your net worth, you can take out roughly 4% of it every year, and that money should last you at a minimum of 30 years, hopefully many, many years longer. There's like a 96+% probability that this will work.
Yep.
Okay, so that's why rule of thumb, obviously I'm not sitting here guaranteeing, but we use that as a metric, right? So let's say your yearly expenses are $40,000 and you're applying this 4% rule, you would say, I need $1 million in my net worth to make this happen, because 4% of 1 million is 40,000, right?
Exactly.
So it's just the inverse of that 25 times rule. So anyway, long story short, that's the fundamental starting point. And then you look at the individual ways, where can you save money?
And I like that, because the idea of even knowing where to start, having even this rule of thumb gives you something concrete to work with. Because I think so many people are just like, I have no idea. I need money. I need a lot of money. I don't know what it is. So even though some people, complain about the 4% rule, it's like you don't have to live your life by it. It's a guideline, it's a tool, it's a place to get started, because you need something to help you make that move and go forward.
That's
essentially.
exactly it. And it is truly a guideline, but it at least it takes that uncertainty out of it, right?
Yes.
For so many people, it's, okay, you go to that online calculator and they say you need $7.7 million to retire, right? And like, what do? You shut off mentally,
Yeah.
right? Like, who can possibly save $7.7 million?
Exactly.
But what can you do? You can control your expenses, right? You can start on that tomorrow, right? Maybe you're not going to sell your house and sell your car and do all this other nonsense tomorrow, but you can start controlling your expenses. You can just get a sense of where your expenses are, frankly, right? So that to me is a much more empowering starting point of, okay, my expenses are what drive the money that I need in that net worth someday to retire. Whether that is early retirement or traditional retirement, it's essentially none of my business.
Right.
It's just, that's what you should go off of. So I think that's empowering, as opposed to people shutting down when they hear, I need 7.2 million,
Exactly. What you described there reminded me of when I was planning to save up like a 6-month a 6-month emergency fund, and looking at, okay, we have an auto loan. And so I have no problem sharing my number. So for us, 6 months was just under $21,000 is what we needed. And then I looked at it like, well, if we paid off a car, then it would drop down to like $19,000, which is a huge difference. And I think same thing, it's on a much bigger scale, but when you look at retirement, it's the same thing. It gives you the opportunity to say, what can I change in my either my expenses or my income to make a bigger impact, to make that number kind of shrink and become more attainable. I guess you
And
could
it
say.
all gets easier, right? And
Yeah.
again, it's just about that mentality of control, right? And again, small wins, right? It's just making those little choices. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the pillars, right?
Yeah.
So like for me, I've built this life that is a wonderful upper middle class life. Nobody in my area before I had this podcast and kind of was outed a little bit here but no one in my life knew we were any different from anybody else living paycheck to paycheck, right? Just like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
the American dream, right? I mean, I say that as farcically and tongue-in-cheek as possible. But what we did was, and my wife and I were very intentional about this, was we drive old cars. Okay, we both have 2003. I've got a Honda. She has a Toyota. And, these cars have well over 100,000 miles on them each. And we haven't had car payments in 7 to 10 years. That's what, $500 to $600 a month minimum over a 10-year period. And that money invested in low-cost index funds, which is another pillar of FI. We believe in low-cost index funds generally as a way to, I don't know anything about investing. I'm a CPA, but even still, I don't have the time to beat the market. I can't. So what I can control, which comes back to that, is I can control the fees on my investments. So I don't go to a expensive advisor. I don't buy mutual funds with a 1.3% expense ratio. I buy low-cost index funds, generally from Vanguard, but Fidelity and Schwab have very comparable options. So I believe if I match the market over a 50-year period, I'm a very, very happy man. So, that's kind of where I invest. But again, just going back to the cars, is that's enabled us to save probably $100,000+ compounded over a 10+ year period. I mean, that's huge. Astronomical for one change.
Yeah.
And Chris, I have these wonderful cars that look great, and they drive perfectly. To me, it's a commodity. I don't care if I have a Mercedes or my 15-year-old Honda, right? Yeah. It gets me where I need to go.
Exactly. And I think when you embrace what financial independence is and you say, well, I would really like a nice car, but I would also really like to not go to work. And it starts to shift your mind and say, hey, a nice car is great and all, but I'm going to get much more enjoyment out of spending more time with my family, getting to travel, do these things that I couldn't do if I had to work. And by reducing your expenses, keeping things as light as you can, and letting it compound, like you said, you give yourself freedom. And I think that's the encouragement you need. I think that helped me. I was like, of course, I think I had to get a car recently, and I was like, I obviously want a brand new car. But I looked at it, I was like, okay, I could get a used car for half the price of this new car. And what would that mean for me? How much would that accelerate my path to retirement, to financial independence? And it made that decision much easier. It took off that weight or the feeling of, disappointment that I didn't get what I wanted, because it's like, well, this is going to help me get something even better that I'll enjoy more in the future.
Right. You're getting literally years back of your life.
Yeah.
Just for driving a perfectly lovely car. Right?
And there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the car.
Yeah. So to me, it's about building a framework of a life that just is not that expensive.
Yeah.
And then that affords you the opportunity to not be a miser, right? Yeah. This is not about picking up pennies on the side of the road. Financial independence is not about deprivation to me. It's quite the contrary. It's about having time to spend with people that you love, to do things that you want to do, and to approach life with joy and happiness because you have that time.
Yeah.
Right? You're not sitting in an office all day. So, if you create that framework of an inexpensive life, to me, it's real simple. And, this is probably the closing thoughts on the podcast is, for me, it was 4 or 5 things that we did that enabled us to save thousands of dollars per month, which again, compounded over a 15-year working career, which was all I had. I mean, I retired from my corporate job at 35.
Wow.
After 14 years, basically. So it was living in a house that was just not that expensive. Albeit, we had a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the nicest part of the Richmond, Virginia metro area, but we didn't buy the McMansion, even though we could, quote unquote, afford it, right?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, our mortgage was $1,100, which is nothing.
Yeah,
and
nice.
in the grand scheme of things, right? And it was having these low-cost cars, these older cars that we had no car payment for years. It was saving on our cell phone. We use a service called Republic Wireless.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
Nice. And instead of my wife Laura and I, each spending $100 per month on our phone, these phones cost about somewhere between $12 and $16 per month.
Oh, nice.
Each of us, right?
Yeah.
And so that's $180 a month savings. And we have phones that work. They have data. We just don't stream. You have to make choices in life, right? So we don't download podcasts or stream Netflix and YouTube when we're not on Wi-Fi. So, oh, poor me, right? That's the big thing I have to give up. So, but again, is that worth years of my life? Obviously. I would make that decision 1,000 times out of 1,000, right? And then it's just being intentional about our food spending. So my wife is a really great cook and she loves to cook, but she makes delicious, healthy home-cooked meals where she batch cooks. And it saves so much time. It saves we probably spend $700 to $1,000 per month less than
Wow.
our friends and family. It's just in the neighbors, etc. And I mean, that adds up, right? So you talk about just those couple of little things, and that's thousands of dollars per month. And that allows us then to join the Science Museum in Richmond or the Botanical Garden or give money to our favorite local park. It's not being misers. It's not about deprivation. It's that you create that framework and then you can do what you want to do with your life. And I think that's a beautiful message that I think people can get behind.
No, I definitely agree. It's like you're trading one thing for another. You can think about it. I have a finite amount of resources, and I can choose where it goes, and then you can put an importance on that and say, hey, this right here is way more important to me, so I'm willing to give this other thing up because I can live without it. There's workarounds. I can make it work. So, well, thank you. I really appreciate you stopping by, and I think you've given a really great foundation and understanding for what financial independence is. And I'm hoping that by this being out there, people listening to this, that it'll get them more interested, have them seek out more resources. Definitely seek out ChooseFI and get those resources that are out there. And for people who want to get in contact with you, find out more about your show and your website, where should they go?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. And I can't wait to hear this whole series on FI that you're putting together. It should be fun. The easiest way, if you're listening to this podcast, is just search for ChooseFI for financial independence on any podcast player. That's the easiest way. I would suggest starting with episodes 21 and 38, the Pillars of F.I and the Why of F.I. So I think that's the best way. We have a Facebook group with, I think it's 23,000 people in our ChooseFI community. So you can join that on our website, ChooseFI.com. And we'd love to have you in the community for sure.
Oh, no, perfect. Definitely recommend it. It's a great show. A lot of great resources, very applicable and real. So go check that out. I'll put that in the show notes as well, the links to those episodes and to the website and the Facebook group as well. Thank you again, Brad. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Chris. Thanks, buddy.
I just wanted to say thanks again to Airbnb for sponsoring the Poppin' with Fire series and helping me bring a fresh bag of popcorn to all of you listening. If financial independence is one of your goals, then some extra cash will help you get there that much faster. Visit popcornfinance.com/Airbnb to start hosting, and you'll receive $100 cash bonus if you generate $500 in booking value by May 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you all for joining me here for the first episode in the Poppin' with Fire series. I really hope you enjoyed it. And next week, we'll be back for episode 2, and I'll be joined by Julian and Kirsten from Rich and Regular, and we'll be talking about their journey to financial independence, which they're right in the middle of right now. So I had a really fun time talking with them, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation. You can go to popcornfinance.com/fire to get notes on everything that we're going to talk about in the series, to learn about the guests that are coming up, to learn about Brad, who you just heard today, and you can even send me a question or just reach out from that page as well. And before we go, I want to give a shout out to a listener, Christina. She actually won a copy of Rock Retirement, which was given away by episode 89 guest Roger Whitney. Christina sent over a really nice email. She wrote, "I want a copy of Rock Retirement, all from listening to your podcast. Thank you for all you do. I really enjoy listening to your interviews. I'm probably closer to retirement than a lot of your listeners, so this giveaway was super interesting to me. And I won. Keep up all the great energy. You give your listeners who are struggling with debt hope." And I really appreciate that, Christina. One, I'm really excited that you won, and I'm just honored that I was able to help and give you hope in any way. As I've mentioned on the show before, I've struggled with debt, so I know exactly how it feels. The hopelessness, the stress, just an overwhelming feeling. So if there's anything that I'm able to do that helps with that in any way, I'm more than happy to do it. So thank you for writing in, Christina. It means a whole lot to hear from you. And so I'm going to make it more of a point to give shout outs to all of you on the show. So if you leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, if you send me an email, I will make it a point to make time to acknowledge you here on the show, because I really love hearing from you all. And it's really, really cool to be able to actually interact and talk with you all instead of just talking at you through this through this microphone. So definitely reach out if you have any questions, you have any comments, let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or you can just go directly to popcornfinance.com and have a little contact page there, or just go to popcornfinance.com/voicemail to send me your questions or thoughts or anything you got going on. I'd love to hear from you. As always, I appreciate you joining me here for another bag of popcorn. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Your boy keep it poppin' like Mary Poppins.